Hi class, my name is Palatunu Helby and this is my presentation for my Capstone 3 class. As we all know, that this project started in Capstone 2, and Capstone 2 I had the opportunity to work with my class members collectively in a group, creating this PowerPoint, as well as we wrote up a policy brief and reference to the topic to this PowerPoint. On the first page of the PowerPoint, I have listed the class members who contributed to the PowerPoint as well as to the policy brief. The names are Allison Bell, Brianna Kramer, Bradley McNeil, Delana LaForce, and myself, Palatunu Helby. My name is bolded there for your reference. So in Capstone 2, our assignment was to research a problem, research the background to the problem, and propose a solution to the problem. I understand that sounds very generalized, but part of the assignment was to localize the problem, meaning that finding a community, a city, a state, that the problem at hand is very significant problem. So in this presentation, we localized the problem in the state of Arizona. And the problem that we focused together collectively, we thought it was very important to us, was early education in the state of Arizona. So here, the first page of our PowerPoint, we see that it says, their future, your reality. So here we're together as a group, we thought, education is very important to us, and what part of education. So we decided collectively that early education, for us, the foundation of early education was important enough to talk about the problem. Are there problems in early education? And based on our research, we found that yes, there are many problems to early education. So specifically, we're going to talk about localizing problem in early education in the state of Arizona. As I mentioned before, a part of the assignment was to investigate a little bit about the background of the problem, kind of like the history of the problem. So collectively, as a group, we came to a census based on the research that we're at hand reading, that the inequality of distribution of income in the past 4 decades has a great impact on education. Specifically, what we're looking to is early education. So what does that mean? Okay, inequality, not equal distribution of what? Of income. Not everyone has the same income. Based on so many other factors. One family, for example, and the other family does not have the same income, even though they possibly are doing the same jobs. So why is that happening? So yes, that is, we could go into more economics part of that, but if we're looking at a social aspect of it, how is this hindering our society? So as we're digging a little bit more in the research, we found out that the United States, in fact, has the highest percentage in child poverty compared to nations like Canada and Europe. So what does this mean in early education? Because we're going to just focus on early education. So what does this mean? Not having the distribution of income, equal distribution of income. If we're all equal, how is this impacting our society? Is this going to impact our society? And what is the future of these children who are living in areas that are very poor, and they may not have access to early education? What does this mean for them? And what does this mean to, collectively as a nation in the future? Okay, to add what we were talking about, inequality of distribution of income, we first need to really understand what economics reference to as socioeconomic status. What is it? Do we all have socioeconomic status? Do we all different with socioeconomic status? So, I mean, we heard, the abbreviation of low SES. Oh, this individual family or child has low SES. Well, what does that mean exactly? I mean, it's a great acronym to summarize, but what does it mean? And what is the impact of that when you say that? So let's talk about that. Let's go back and say what is the professionals are saying, right? What are the doctors are saying about it? Here we go. American Psychological Association. Well, according to American Psychological Association, socioeconomic status encompasses not just income but also educational attainment, financial security, and subjective perceptions of social status and social class. So what does that mean? Well, that means that depending on where you live, what is your educational background, and how much you make, society have already classified you as either the have or the have-nots. But are we working in between? That we're still in the question, right? So let's talk about education. Here it says educational attainment. Well, what does that mean? Did you go to, so basically, did you finish high school? Did you get GED? Did you go get your bachelor's? Do you have an advanced degree? Do you have a PhD? You know, well, let's go further back to that. Did you have preschool experience? Did you have early education exposure? So is that important? So depending on that, if you have a good quality early education, right, versus those who may not have the opportunity to go to Head Start, is there a difference between that? Then let's talk about employment. They're saying training, professional development, security. What does that mean? That means, when you have an employment, do you get enough professional development? Is your job secure? Do you have enough training? Do you have to continue your training? Social status and social class, how society categorizes us, right? Depending on, like I said, those who graduate a community college versus those who graduate an Ivy League school. Do we say that you come from different socioeconomic class? Those who graduate from an Ivy League school, we have this perception of saying that, oh, he or she, that student came from a very, affluent family, versus those who say, well, you know what, I came from an inner city school and I worked really hard and I got scholarship and got into Harvard. There's a history behind that. So we're going to dig in this a little bit more. As we're digging a little bit more about the meaning of socioeconomic status, we come across what social scientists refer as low SES. So what does this acronym stand for? Well, it stands for low socioeconomic status, hence the word low. It is basically, if you put it in terms, the opposite of what we just talked about, generalizing socioeconomic status. Depending on your education, of your attainment of your education, depending on your employment, society puts you in a specific social class and status. So when you're coming from a low socioeconomic status, meaning that if you're coming from communities who do not have allocated funds for education, who do not have proper training for employment, where are you placed as far as how society places you as far as social class and status? So here we would consider that as low socioeconomic status. So going a little bit deeper, when we talked about education, attainment of education, for those who are living in low socioeconomic status, how does that look like? Well, it's limited access to resources, specifically in inner city schools. They have shortage of teachers are burned out. They may or may not have visual arts or music classes, or maybe even PE classes. And of course, limited allocated funds for schools. Those schools who are in low socioeconomic status, what is the funding and how does it look like? And that's where we get into specifics about early education. Employment, how does employment looks like in low socioeconomic status? There's no job security, limited opportunities of moving toward a higher paid positions. Most likely they're in the low paid minimum wage jobs that are hourly based, not pretty much salary. So there's no moving up in the ladder. And how does society puts the low socioeconomic status families? What kind of social class and what kind of status? Here we call poverty. That is the name, And one thing that I wanted to mention that was important to also is to mention is health. You've got to look at the health of the children and the families in these communities. You have to look and what is their health statuses. They have poor health. They have, for example, they have limited routine checkups, meaning that they don't have routine checkups once a year for physical exams. They may have limited doctors, meaning that they don't have specialized doctors. For example, if a child have asthma problems or have allergy problems, there's basically one doctor for all. Do they have access to specific specialty doctors? Limited counseling services, meaning that, does those communities have access to counseling in adolescent period, or behavior challenges, promoting, different type of interventions to help families to cope with behavior challenges. One of the other important aspects in early education that we really focus on is hygiene, especially dental hygiene, oral hygiene. Children who are between the ages of 2 to 5. Most parents and the low SES don't consider that as a very important aspect of a child's, routine health checkup is to go visit a dentist. So that's one of the things that we promote a lot as early educators is educating the parents and caregivers the importance of maintaining good oral hygiene because that will impact on their speech abilities. So if they're not having a good oral hygiene and they're not brushing their teeth, for example, or teaching them how to take care of their toothbrushes and so forth, is this going to affect their speech abilities? Those children who are in need of, for example, braces. How does a parent know if their child needs that kind of care? So does this impact on their learning abilities? So yes, so it's very important that we talk about health as well. We're talking about socioeconomic status. Now we have a little bit understanding the difference between socioeconomic status and low socioeconomic status. Earlier in this presentation, we talked about inequality distribution of income, which led us to investigate the differences between of the statuses. Now we're going to talk about the scope of the problem. Collectively, as a group, we decided that we want to focus on children who are coming from low socioeconomic status families. We want to see their performance in early education, and if they have access to early education, how does that look like? In addition, we also stated that the United States has the highest child poverty compared to Canada and Europe. So let's put some numbers behind that. In the United States, currently there are 72.4 million children under the age of 18 years old, according to the National Center for Children and Poverty. 41% of those children are low income, to 19% are poor, while nearly 51% is poverty threshold. So what does that mean? So if you look at the chart, you see there's borderlines between being poor. I mean, you could be poor and still making it as being above low income. Then you're like almost poor, which is near poor. So why is that significant to see? Because depending on your state and the city, there are different type of threshold that families need to meet, and those brackets and numbers are made and created by the policymakers. So for example, if you're a family of four and you make $55,000 a year and you're living in Arizona, you need to investigate if you meet the poverty threshold, where you can see if you could be approved in some of the programs they may or may not have available to you. And that's where the importance they come in, as far as to find out exactly how poor you really are. Basically, that's what this chart is also telling us, in addition to stating that 72.4 million children under the age of 18 years old, and almost 59% of them are low income. So the astonishing truth is that 45% of those children are under the age of 3, live in poverty in the United States. So young children make most of the population of those living in poverty. So the younger children under the age of 5 are living in these conditions of low socioeconomic statuses. So the numbers are telling us that we have a high percentage rates of children under the age of 5 living in low socioeconomic statuses. So what does this mean when they're entering preschool? So based on our findings, we found out that children from low SES families has lower performance in school, both academically and behaviorally. Most of these children receive little to or no previous education before attending elementary school, which severely affects not only academic performance but also behaviors. Research shown that children who are in low-income families in first grade have lower academic achievement and behavioral regulation skills when they first start school. So children who are coming from low SES family backgrounds, typically they're one reading level behind. Children who do not attend in preschool at all are at risk for falling behind their peers. For example, kindergarten entry exams have shown a gap in both math and reading when comparing children who attended preschool and those who did not. A lot of parents, they think that kindergarten will close the education gap, but that's not in the case, especially for those children are coming from low SES background. The benefits of attending preschool extend beyond the classroom. Studies show that children who do attend preschool are half as likely to become a teen. They were also 2.5 times more likely to attend college. Here, looking at these numbers indicate that regardless of the statuses, children who attend early education have a better outcome academically and developmentally. However, children from low-income families with uneducated parents has a relatively low attendance in early education programs. For this reason, children from low-income families who do not attend an early education program may encounter developmental delays. Thereby, when a child does not attend an early education program, they lose out on opportunity to gain pre-academic skills. In addition, lack of peer communication interaction. When a child does not attend preschool or any type of early education, they miss out on interaction with other preschoolers and miss the opportunity to learn basic problem solving skills that they would normally learn from being around their peers. When children are around other children in learning setting, they learn how to share, how to work with others, and learn how to communicate better. These are all very important skills needed when they enter grade school and become an adult. We looked into how early education has an impact on children, on their academics, and on their developmental domains. Now we're going to look into a more specific area and location to localize the problem. So we're going to look into the state of Arizona, specifically children who come from low SES backgrounds. And this slide here it shows us the children in low-income families in Arizona by age in the year of 2015. We see that under age of 6 was 54%, and children of ages 6 and older were 49%. So what does it tell us here, the bar gap? It tells us that there are more children under the age of 6 who are living in low-income families in Arizona, which is 54%. Since there are high numbers of children under the age of 6 in Arizona, this means that Head Start meets the needs of 1/4 of low-income children in Phoenix. Phoenix Head Start centers offer 3,090 student slots in their classroom, but this is only enough for about a quarter of the preschool age children who live in low-income households in the city. Some school districts in Phoenix offer public preschool programs. However, the recent cut of education funding from state makes programs like these more difficult to run. Recent reports show that state funding provides only $4,242 per student in a school year compared to $4,949 provided in 2008. So as a group collectively, we were thinking about how we could come up with a solution to support those families who are in low SES backgrounds. How can we support them, their children's educational needs at home? The fact that parents are unaware of how important early education is for their child is one of the causes of the low early education attendance rate. Research has found that children and families receiving welfare had vocabularies half as large as their peers because of low quality parental speech they were raised around. Children who stay at home and don't attend early education programs are not likely to receive stimulating educational care at home. Our recommendation is that children and their parents who are not able to draw upon early education resources, for example, families who do not meet the income guidelines to enroll their children at Head Start programs, or parents who do not have resources to enter their children in early education, can still have hope to achieve high educational goals. Therefore, our proposed solution is directed parental teaching at home. Thereby, children in low-income families who have consistent educational engagement with their parents show higher classroom educational outcomes than low-income children who do not engage with their parents in this manner. Our solution to the problem is creating and developing a program called Early Head Start Home Program. Studies indicate that Early Head Start home visiting programs such as this promote school readiness, have positive effects on social behavior, and parents showed years later to have home environments supportive of learning. Our proposed solution, the Early Head Start program at home, will benefit the children of Arizona who come from low SES background will not only receive quality education, but their parents also become their learning partners. As the city of Phoenix focuses on early education, the pathway towards success will be clear and appealing to children.